everybody, Germany's Coaster Yard here, and in today's episode of Germanator Studios, we are going to be continuing work on our resort complex by adding another couple hotel buildings, and also building a parking garage that we can use, that we can replicate throughout the resort property. To start though, I decided to add some not service roads, but public roads, so guests can get around the resort property. And I did this just to sort of map it out since we're building in the direction you see, but also just to sort of figure out where I wanted it in the grand scheme of things. And you can see I'm also adding a road alongside the resort property, or along the edge of it, and across that road is where I'm going to build the other hotel property, the other hotel building, I should say. It's all sort of part of the same complex, but I don't remember if I mentioned this, but I'm thinking about doing more hotels slash resorts, maybe one or two more in another portion of the property, but for now we're just sticking with this generic themed hotel. So to start, you can see me breaking out the modular hotel pieces from the last episode, and it's pretty straightforward. If you didn't see the last episode, the pieces you see me using are available on RCTgo.com, and there's a link in the last episode to download those. In here you can see I'm adding a end cap sort of arrangement. Here's a better look at how I designed my elevators too. It was hard to see in the last episode. And similar to the last one, I'm doing elevators, and I'll do a staircase as well as a housekeeping closet space. And all that is basically the same as it was in the last episode. There isn't really any change from my design. I wanted to keep it consistent because it's part of the same resort complex, so I didn't want to do anything that looked too different. I guess the biggest change is that these buildings are not the L-shaped ones we did in the last episode. These are just rectangular buildings, and they're sort of meant to just be a border to the property that adds more space. And here I'm just adding in a floor. And you'll notice I really focused on this one side, and you'll see here, after I place that railing, I will save that as its own piece and then copy it to the other side. And one thing you'll see me do, I believe in a moment, maybe not, but I will get rid of one of the elevator shafts, and I think I just leave that as like an alcove for vending space. And here you can see me putting a topper on the elevator shaft. Pretty straightforward. And some air conditioning. Now one thing I noticed later on is I put that air conditioning piece right in front of a doorway, so I ended up moving the doorway to the other side. And yeah, there's not much to it other than that. One thing I have thought about is, and I included this on the parking garage we built, but I realized aside from that doorway, there's no proper roof access. So I may extend the staircases upwards by one flight, just so that way there's proper roof access to each building. And here's where you can see I am getting rid of those elevators. Yeah, I believe it was the elevator. It might have been the, now I can't remember. Anyway, I can't remember. I think it got rid of the elevators on the one side, and just put flooring in. And here you can see me saving the building as a whole structure and putting it on the other side. And right there you can see I'm seeing if it fits anywhere else, but I decided just to leave it as it is for now. And no harm, no foul. Now here you can see me getting rid of some railings, and it's not because I want guests to fall 4 stories. But you can see I'm actually starting to put in a bridge between the two buildings. And I'm pretty happy with how this bridge turned out. It basically is a double-decker bridge, so you can cross it from two floors of the building, the fourth and the fifth floor. And the lower deck is enclosed entirely, but the upper deck is open air. So I thought it was pretty unique, and I like how it turned out. And in just a moment, you'll see me putting on the wall girder pieces from the colored wall set, just to add some structure to the outside. And in a moment, you'll see me save this bridge piece and copy it around the property. I was just going to do it from in two locations, but then I thought, hey, I'll put it in all four spots there. And here you can see me putting it all the way on the other ends, which I may not leave those there in the end. And I just sort of put it just about everywhere I could on the property. You won't see me finish these bridges I'm placing right now in this video, but I just sort of put them there to figure, well, if we're connecting a bunch of buildings, we might as well connect them all. And I think this could be beneficial because these could be busy roadways, just to help keep guests safe so they don't have to cross any streets, at least not crossing in the path of traffic. And here is just the monotonous work of getting rid of all those railings so people can actually, well, quote unquote, use the bridges. Obviously, the hotels and the bridges are non-functional within the game itself, but they're just aesthetic. Um, but that's fine by me. Uh, I think it's important to make things look nice as well as function. And if something doesn't function, that just means you can put more effort into making it look nice. Um, but obviously there's a balance between the two. And here you can see me just extending those pathways to the road. And now we're going to get started on the parking garage design. And this is actually my second time designing the parking garage. I designed it and filmed it and everything, and I wasn't entirely happy with how it turned out. So I decided to load up a fresh world where I would basically fix everything that I didn't like about the first design. So that's why you kind of see me placing stuff to a certain length. I already knew what length and dimensions I wanted everything to have. Basically, I wanted there to be enough space um, for 2 lanes of traffic, or I guess I should say 2 tiles wide for cars to drive on. Then obviously they would need 2 tiles of space perpendicular to the borders for parking. There's also interior space for parking, but you won't see me place any cars there, so it's kind of hard to explain. There's just another elevator shaft, and on the opposite side you'll see me not really design, but place a stairwell. And I changed up this stairwell design a little bit, so I used a 1/3 height colored wall and the 2/3 height glass wall, as opposed to just doing a full height glass wall. And I thought that worked well for the parking garage. Yeah, not much to say about that. Here I'm just putting in railings, and you'll notice that aside from the color, the aesthetic design is very similar to the hotels, especially with the railings. I decided to go for the same design because I thought it looked nice. Um, I don't like that the 1/3 height railings are just a little bit too small. They definitely would not be compliant with standards. And but then I feel like the 2/3 height is a little too big, but it's better to have a railing that's too high than too low. And I like being able to use the fence piece because it makes the railing functionally higher, but aesthetically it sort of ends for the eye where the concrete ends. And that's one little technique I guess I can offer is you can use the not just using the pieces to your advantage, but also using basically what's not there to your advantage, if that makes sense. Um, so the air in between creates the illusion of less, even though there's still a full height railing. But that's just a very big digression. So here you can see I copied over that entire structure. And what I'm doing here is basically outfitting it to function as an upper story. So there would be no access points for vehicles or for pedestrians. Um, and I will copy this twice, and each of these layers is going to be 2 stories tall. Um, Basically, what I'm doing, so I mentioned I'm doing a modular hotel or a modular parking garage. Um, it'll be similar to the modular hotels in that it'll be a set of pieces that you can use to um, build the parking garages, but this one will be a lot simpler. It's only going to be 3 pieces, and it's only modular in that you can build it as tall as you want, basically. Um, but there's not a lot for lateral building. um, Basically, the size it is here is pretty much the size it would be if you chose to build it in your own park. Um, but I do make 4 pieces for the modular kit. So you saw me do base the base piece where the vehicles can enter and pedestrians can enter. Then the middle layer piece, which is you would that's where you would decide how many stories you want. And then I'm gonna do 2 roof pieces. One of them is a covered roof, and the other one is just an open roof, which is pretty standard, I think, for most parking garages. Um, and I figured I would add those options just because I think it can be beneficial to have that choice, I think. And it was a bit of extra effort to include both roofs, so it'll make it easier for anybody who wants to use these in their Rollercoaster Tycoon parks. And here you can just see me adding access for the elevator shafts. Nothing too crazy. And I feel like this is similar to the hotels where there's not a lot to talk about on screen. Um, it's all very cut and dry. Um, Right here, I am starting on the open roof, so I replaced the full height walls with 2/3 height walls. I figured those don't need to have the metal railings on top of them, they can just be 2/3 height. But when I do the closed roof, I will go back to the full height walls. And I'm trying to think of anything else I can talk about. As you can see, there's not a whole lot of things to say. Um, Alright, and right here is where you can see me working on that closed roof. Um, there was, I guess, a bit of considerations. It wasn't just as simple as putting a roof over the entire structure. And you'll see eventually where I talked about roof access for the hotels. What I do here is what I'm going to do, I believe, for the hotels. Um, I won't get to it right away, so I'll talk about it when I do. But right here, you can just see me um, putting on the border pieces for the roof, and eventually I will go back over this and replace the edges with similar to what I did with the hotel. Instead of using the office roof edge, I will use just a flat office roof with the 1/3 height colored wall, and that just again it makes it more aesthetically pleasing, and it adds sort of a more aesthetic boundary. It makes it, if you as you can see, it's more square and more consistent with the look of things. And I also will replace the small like caps on the elevator shaft on the stairways with that same concept. Here you can see me building up the staircase. Pretty simple. I experimented with colors just to emphasize that it's not an area that guests are allowed to go, but in the end I decided against it. I figured those doors would be locked anyway, so it doesn't really matter if a guest tries to go through them or not. And there you can see where I'm just building up the walls a little more, and I will put the normal office roof pieces in there. Um, Nothing too crazy. I wish I would have sped this up more, to be honest, because there's just so little to talk about. If you guys want to skip ahead, I don't blame you. But there's only 3 minutes left at this point. So if you've been watching this far, thanks. I appreciate it. Okay, there's a transition coming up. Okay, something new to talk about and kind of interesting. So in my original parking garage design, I included the cars with the garage, but it just looked awful because I used the preset line of cars I had. I used it in another episode when we built the concert hall. Um, so I decided to take what I had and basically rearrange the cars and recolor them so that way it just looks a little bit better. Um, and that it does, I think. So there's less, there are fewer patterns as long as you use all three of the lines. And I save them individually as um, as their own lines, and those will fit lengthwise in the garage. You'll see me place them in a little bit. Um, and I need to do still the shorter sides cars for those. And I may or may not do cars for the middle, but since you can't really see those unless you go into free cam, I may just leave the cars in the middle out uh, just to be nice to my computer because I played this game on a laptop. It's not always a big fan of running this game. Um, and here you can just see me doing a couple measurements to figure out where I'm going to place the garage. And in just a moment, you'll see. So this is a good example too of how to build the modular with the modular pieces. So there's the base piece. Then here is the middle piece. And then I used the covered roof here. And my reasoning was because we're right next to the amusement park. And I figured people like to launch fireworks off of parking garage roofs. Like I feel like I've seen videos of that. And I figured guests in a theme park slash resort would try to do the same thing, and that would disrupt the theming and the atmosphere of the theme park. So I decided a covered roof it is. That way, if guests try to do something stupid, it won't work. So pretty straightforward reasoning there, and that's why I included a covered roof too, because I figured maybe you guys like that attention to detail when you build. Or maybe you just want an open roof to have more parking space or whatever you want. So I do need to do a little more work, mainly just putting in the extra lines of cars. But as soon as I finish that, I will make the garage available, the modular garage kit, I should say, available to everybody. Um, and I will share a link as well. And here you can just see me getting rid of cars. I wanted to sort of stagger it. So I wanted to have the most cars along the bottom row and then the fewest cars along the top row, and basically taper it from bottom to top. But that's going to do it for this episode. So I hope you guys have a great day, and I will see you in the next episode.